Hi, everyone. Welcome to the February 2024 LAPPG meeting. Thank you so much for being here with us this evening. We really appreciate it. We have an amazing presentation for you tonight. I've been wanting to do this for so long, and I'm so thankful and thrilled to the folks from WECA who are here. Their presence here means a lot to me. So I thank you guys both for being here. First, we have Shaina Fawn, LCSW. Shaina's a licensed clinical social worker and co-founder of Wellbeing in Entertainment and Creative Arts, and a nonprofit organization founded in 2021 with the goal of bringing trauma-informed principles and practices to the entertainment industry. Shaina has over 18 years of experience in the mental health field and has worked in various roles such as crisis interventionist, case manager, assessment specialist, medical social worker, therapist, and director, and is passionate about bridging the gap in services that currently exist in the entertainment industry. And Ari Simon is here. Ari is the founder of Grief at Work and a WECA board member. They lead workshops, training, coaching, and consulting around loss, grief, resilience, and well-being. Ari's practice equips people to best thrive in the face of grief and loss, increasing well-being, psychological safety, and successful outcomes. Their landmark program, Grief at Work, trains and supports staff in grief and loss, competency, and care, spurring greater resiliency in the workplace. In recent years, Ari has made entertainment and film a key focus of their work, bringing strategies and services that transform outcomes for talent, crew, and productions at large. So thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having us, Wendy. We're so happy to be here to talk about something that's really near and dear to both of our hearts. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to let you guys go with it. I'm going to be watching from the background, and I'll see you when you guys are finished.
Awesome. Thank you so much again. Thank you for the wonderful introduction, Wendy. I won't spend too much time talking about myself, but as Wendy did mention, I am a licensed clinical social worker. My name is Shaina Fawn. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I've really been in the mental health field for about 20 years in various types of settings, and most recently started WECA, Wellbeing in Entertainment and Creative Arts, in 2022 with my partner, Tai Tillman. And really, WECA envisions an entertainment industry guided by trauma-informed principles, where health, safety, and well-being is really center and prioritized throughout the creative process from pre to post-production. And we strive to be the premier hub of well-being in entertainment in the United States, ensuring that creative spaces are well-equipped to promote the health, safety, and well-being of cast and crew members. So we're committed to decreasing mental health stigma, increasing access to support, and eventually working to establish industry standards for well-being. We are working to develop resources and training, partnering with productions to provide risk assessments, provide consultation, and support and uplift ongoing mental health research. So really excited to be here today to spend some time talking with you all again about something that's deeply important to me, both personally and professionally. I'm going to hand it over to Ari.
Thanks, Shaina. Hi, everybody. And thank you so much, Wendy and Woody, for having us again. Really lovely to be here. So as Wendy introduced, I'm Ari Simon, they, them, theirs. I am the founder of Grief at Work, which, is really my best way of trying to bring meaning-making, sense-making, and sort of life-affirming purposefulness to our working lives. And so often over the years of a lot of different industries that I've worked in, from sort of government spaces to the entertainment industry, when I have held space for sort of folks, which I used to do more in my kind of extracurricular on the side life, I would just hear time and time again when we would talk about sort of grief and loss and what's challenging. And I'd ask people, where is this not welcome in your lives? And time again, the number one answer would be in the workplace, in my work life. There's just like no room to really go there about this, about what I'm really going through, what I'm really feeling, or just what this work is bringing up for me, or, you know, how it's feeling really impossible to meet these goals. And so I had a little bit of a crash course in just hearing that head on in a couple of productions I was involved in over the last several years. I've been living between Los Angeles and mountaineer parts of Southern California for the last 15 years. And it was really, this is kind of the inspiration for me to start Grief at Work. So I'm also just super grateful to get to sort of present with Shaina. And we're going to walk you through a handful of different things this evening. We also really want to make time for your questions. We are also monitoring the chat. So please feel free. If there are concepts that are coming up and you're like, wait, hold up, could you explain that one more time? Feel free to put it in the chat. We'll probably save more general, bigger questions for the end, but we will keep an eye on them. And so our goals for this evening, we want to give you an opportunity to hear about current research on well-being, particularly as it affects the entertainment industry. Shaina is an incredibly modest human, but also is doing a PhD on this topic. And so she brings a ton of expertise and more exploring on this. We're going to just sort of shine a light on some of the unique threats to well-being that we know post-production and freelance workers face, and hopefully give you a little bit of hope and guidance towards practices that can support psychological safety and well-being, and give you some tools that you can use right away too.
Yeah, so one of the first tools, we're going to jump right into it, is mindfulness. And I say this recognizing fully that, you know, some people really embrace mindfulness, others don't. We're not going to spend a lot of time doing this, but Ari and I like to start our presentations with just a brief mindful moment, because it is a trauma-informed practice, and it's one that's backed by research and has shown to be able to improve well-being by reducing stress and anxiety. Regular mindfulness practice has also been correlated with increased subjective well-being scores, reduced psychological symptoms, and improved emotion regulation. And it's something that you can incorporate really easily into your day, either professionally or personally. So we just want to be able to model that here a little bit. So I want you to just kind of take a moment in your seat now and just get comfortable. You can do this with your eyes open or eyes closed, whatever feels best for you. There's really no right or wrong. And let's just start by taking a deep breath in through your nose and a long, extended breath out through your mouth. We're going to do that a few more times, and just notice what happens to your shoulders as you breathe in that way. You'll just notice that your shoulders kind of start to relax and tension just kind of starts to melt away. And really with mindfulness, we're just being present in the moment. We're not judging anything. We're not setting up any expectations. We're really just taking a moment to just be. And so as you continue to take some deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth, I want you to think of a color that for you represents energy and vitality. It can be any color. And as you're taking your breaths, I want you to imagine that there is a bright light shining over your head in this color, whatever color you associate with energy and vitality. And as you're taking your breaths, particularly the out breath, the light is getting stronger and it's shining over your head and just all into your body, lighting up your entire being. And just notice what happens as this light starts to permeate inside. Maybe there's some shifts. Maybe you're feeling a little bit more focused, grounded. We're going to take just a few more minutes here to just enjoy. This might for many of you be, the first time you've actually been able to kind of relax all day. So just soak it up. And just know that this is available to you. You can come back to this practice anytime you need. This is one of many, many different types of mindfulness that is available. So when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes, maybe kind of wiggle your body a little bit, coming back into the space, maybe feeling a little bit more grounded and ready for our discussion this evening.
So appreciating that. I also have been mostly on my screen all day doing work and also have not taken enough moments to just consciously breathe. So on that note, would just love for us to use the chat where we have 2 questions for you that will kind of help us set the tone. First, would love you to just share 1 or 2 words to describe just how you're showing up this evening. Just create a little bit of a sense of community here. If you're feeling calm, feeling super tired, scared, agitated, hopeful, nervous, so you can just go ahead and throw in the chat just 1 or 2 words to describe how you're feeling, how you're showing up, what it's like to be you right now. Awesome. Seeing really great responses in the chat. A lot of curiosity, tiredness, 100%. Anxious, thankful, drained, stressed, hopeful, exhausted, appreciative, a little nervous. Yeah, totally normal. Grateful. Love all of the sort of pairings of like, I'm so tired and exhausted, and I'm also curious and open and hopeful. Yeah, I hear that a lot. This is great. And for all of you who are tired, I'm raising my hands too, really full permission to just receive this however is best for you. Get horizontal, drink tea. It's often we put a lot of resistances in front of ourselves to just kind of let go and let give. And so let this be a 1 hour in your day where you get to do that. So thanks everyone for sharing. We'll move on to 1 more question. I think Wendy was getting at this a little bit with the poll, but we'd just love to hear in a word or 2 what comes to mind when you think of the challenges of doing post-production and freelance work. I recognize that this could probably easily be a paragraph or an essay or an entire novel, but just if you can, in a word or 2 or 3, what feels like kind of the core challenge of doing this work? Yeah. Totally. Balance. I'm seeing staying employed, right? The uncertainty, communication and clarity. Totally. Consistency, reduced day rates, the work-life balance, stress, instability, freedom to create, right? Always trying to give my best. I'm imagining that's over long hours and, feeling unheard, the pressure to feel creative, not always feeling appreciated, diving in too deep and too long. Oh, yeah. Too many hats to wear. Yes. Yes. Yeah, these are great. And really glad to hear feels like we're already sort of kind of bringing in a shared language. You're going to hear a lot of these reflected in the rest of our presentation too. And I think this is exactly sort of the right place to start our inquiry is, okay, with these factors at play, these are really serious issues that are going to get in the way of our own personal well-being and even our ability to do good work. So, I always say, I think the return on investment of really focusing on this is really strong. And so I'm going to turn it to Shaina to share a little bit about kind of setting the scene and the research.
Yeah. Thank you, Ari, and thank you all for sharing. I was, reading and just reflecting on, wow, how much of this is actually shown in the research, which I'm going to talk about now. So we always start our discussions off by taking a look at the research because it's helpful to know what trends have been seen so that we know how to appropriately respond. We have to know what the trends are, what's going on, in order to know what kind of supports can be put in place. And so you all will see in the research I'm about to present that a lot of what you spoke about in the chat is actually reflected in the research. So I hope that provides maybe just some comfort in just knowing that, you're not alone, that there are some people somewhere that are starting to look at this and really see like this is an issue and we need to address it. So unfortunately, there's not a lot of research, especially like academic, scholarly, peer-reviewed research, which was one of the reasons I decided to go back for a PhD, which some people might wonder what's wrong with me. I sometimes wonder what's wrong with me, but, this research is deeply needed. And so much of the research that we do have, however, has come out of the UK and Australia. And WECA has actually compiled all of this research into a document briefing, which we're going to share with you. There will be a QR code on the next slide where you can download, the full information because it's just kind of too much to cover in our discussion tonight. But what we do know in general is that there are some disturbing trends when it comes to mental health, well-being, safety in the entertainment and creative arts industry. So a lot of the statistics I'm going to be giving right now come from a study called the Looking Glass, which was conducted in the UK in 2020 with over 3,000 participants. And they found that 87% of these participants reported experiencing a mental health problem at some point in their life when compared with 65% of the general population. Specifically, 64% of the respondents experienced depression when compared with only 42% of the general population. And also really disturbing, they found that half of the sample half of the sample considering suicide, thinking about taking their own life. And when that's compared with the UK, the national average, it's 1 in 5. So it's almost 3 times more likely. And the Center for Disease Control and Prevention in the United States found that actually the entertainment industry in our country ranked number 3 in death by suicide. So really intense, upsetting information that kind of, I think, might cause a lot of different feelings. I know it causes kind of anger in me when I think about, like, why is this not more talked about? Why are we not doing anything about this? The research also highlighted that racial, ethnic, and gender and sexual minorities experienced higher rates of mental health, substance abuse, and bullying and harassment problems when compared with their more privileged counterparts. And across all minority groups, the hostile working conditions were a factor that made people consider leaving the industry for good. With regards to post-production work specifically, I wanted to highlight that 2 out of 3 participants surveyed said that they received insufficient support when dealing with distressing content. And so with post-production specifically, this is a really significant risk factor, which we're going to talk about a little bit later in more detail. The Looking Glass survey continues to do studies each year. So they're kind of taking a longitudinal look at this stuff. And their most recent publication, they said that only 11% of people surveyed considered the entertainment industry a healthy place to work, which I found to be just, really disturbing, along with all of these other things. So this sort of sets the scene for what we're really talking about here. But if you're interested in taking a look further at the research, you can scan this QR code. This will take you to WECA's resource hub. In addition to finding the resources that we're building, you can scroll down and download the research brief at the end of the page. All right, so moving into our discussion this evening, we wanted to give an overview of exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about well-being. So well-being, I think, often is thought of in terms of like physical health. So like physical wellness, eating healthy, exercising, those kinds of things. But it really goes much deeper. And it's really a combination of all of the different parts of being human, all the different things that make us human. So emotional, spiritual, psychological. And really we're living in interesting times because the pandemic really brought to light well-being, and it brought it kind of front and center. And really we were starting to think about well-being in new ways when we, all experienced this sort of collective trauma, lockdown, significant loss of life, fear, uncertainty, all of those things. But really, well-being is the ability to live in your true potential as the best possible version of yourself. So it's really just like a complete and holistic, version, not just physical. So research has shown that there are various dimensions of well-being, and they're listed here on the screen. So some of the ones I mentioned previously, but additional ones, financial, environmental, social. You'll see that one of them is vocational. And I wanted to highlight that because, the average American in this country spends a significant amount of time at work. And if you're in the entertainment industry, probably more than the average American. And so a question that we often ask ourselves at WECA is if people are working in kind of toxic environments, and their well-being is not being considered uplifted, supported, what does that do to the rest of these dimensions? What's the toll that it has? In addition to those dimensions of well-being, we look at psychological well-being specifically, and there's some components that are important to consider when we think of, psychological well-being. Autonomy really being your ability to work independently and be trusted. Connection to others. We know that humans, we know this from the pandemic, that we don't do well in isolation. We really need connection to others and connection to coworkers. We need to feel like we're part of a community. We need opportunities for growth and development. We need to be able to meet our personal needs. That kind of goes into a lot of the economic uncertainty that people experience in the industry. We need to have self-acceptance, and this is really kind of self-love, self-esteem, self-efficacy. And lastly, we need to live a life that has meaning and purpose, where we have goals for ourselves and we feel like our goals are attainable and achievable. The last thing I wanted to mention when talking about well-being is to talk about psychological safety. This is something that a lot of researchers are now looking at in the context of workplaces. And really, it's something that doesn't occur naturally. It must be created and maintained by, leaders, but also by all members of workplaces. And there's 4 key factors that promote psychological safety. Again, inclusion and belonging. So feeling like you belong to a community, that you're not, alone, that you have people who care about you and feel, safe with. We need to feel safe to learn, to ask questions, to grow. We need to feel safe to contribute, so that our contributions, our ideas are taken into account, that we're considered experts in our field and that people listen to us. And lastly, we need to feel safe to challenge. We need to feel safe to say, hey, something's not sitting right with me, or I didn't appreciate when, you said X, Y, and Z. And so when you think about psychological safety in the entertainment industry, many of these things are missing. Maybe they're there a little bit, but they're not fully there. And so this is another area where we have a lot of opportunity to support. And what we do know is that high levels of psychological safety lead to high levels of staff engagement, and that leads to less burnout, more productivity. And in the context of the creative arts industry, I would argue, better, high quality productions and artistic expression. So when our psychological safety and our well-being are not properly cared for, it can show up in many ways. It can manifest in some of these ways. And so I just wanted to spend a moment to just highlight what we call red flags. And so these are things that you might see in yourself, you might see in others, that might indicate that, well-being isn't being centered, or that psychological safety is a concern. And so if you start to kind of notice a drastic change in your behavior or the behavior of others, or poor communication skills, frequent conflict, withdrawal and isolation, maybe declining work performance, or just feeling like you're not really in it, that you're just kind of showing up and you're, present but not really present. It can also show up in increased call-outs, more frequent illness, immune system problems, and just a really difficult time basically managing emotions. So there's some common threats to well-being in creative spaces that the research has highlighted. I want to just jump immediately to uncertainty, because that was one of the ones that was mentioned in the chat earlier. I saw it a lot from a lot of people. I think I also saw communication and boundary issues, unrealistic expectations, but also toxic stress and anxiety, bullying and harassment, long work hours, and then just some things that, really are kind of just byproducts of being human, which is grief and loss and trauma. So some of these things, are sort of to be expected, just because we're humans living in a world where lots of things happen, and we experience loss, we experience interpersonal trauma, community trauma. But what the research is really highlighting is that these things occur at higher rates in the entertainment industry specifically. And when you kind of take a layer back, to look specifically at post-production, there's some additional threats to well-being that are present. And so, if you read the ones on the screen, these probably really resonate with many of you. The first one that has been highlighted over and over in the research is exposure to traumatic and sensitive content. And so, this can show up in many ways, working with editing stories, of someone who is going through something really significant or traumatic. And the reason why this is so important and needs extra care and attention is because we as humans have our own experience of trauma that may be triggered as a result of our work. And we might see ourselves in the things that we're working on. And as a result, we might experience symptoms of trauma like flashbacks, insomnia, irritability, and this can, over time, lead to burnout. It can lead to some of those red flags that I mentioned on the previous slide. And if it's not triggering your own personal trauma, it might also trigger something called vicarious trauma, which is where you start to identify with the content or the person or the victim in the work that you're doing. And you might, again, start to experience some of those disturbing symptoms. So really, this is an area that really deserves its own webinar. We're not going to spend much more time talking about it today, but really definitely an area of concern that we want to address in our work. Ari, I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, and so I think you're absolutely right. This is it's such a big topic that we could really spend so much more time on, but just also want to make sure that we get into sort of some scenarios and tools. So kind of what we're going to look at a little bit more is sort of on the other side of this column, aspects of this work that are really difficult because a lot of us are working in isolation and there's loneliness that comes up, difficult deadlines, remote work. So these are some protective factors that you can just start kind of thinking about now, and then we're going to take this and do a little scenario together. These might seem really obvious, but it's so easy to get really caught up in our work and kind of go in tunnel vision that we can kind of forget. Also, when we're on tight deadlines and it feels like, we're pulling 16-hour days for 7 days in a row, it's like everything else can kind of disappear. And so I also feel like, holding all of these with like making sure that you're doing your very best to like get adequate sleep and move and get outside and then also kind of just meeting our own experience with as much kindness as possible. Knowing that there are going to be those couple of day stretches where we're just not taking care of ourselves in the most ideal way, and being as kind as possible through that, and also then making sure that we're therefore really meeting our needs when we can come out of the tunnel. But it's really tricky. So moving to the next slide. Just some more protective actions. So this is sort of just, again, protecting our time, protecting our own safety. Want to move us into the scenario. I think that's next. Yeah. So I'm going to have Shaina read this scenario, and then I'm just going to ask us to, you can't unmute, so we're going to have you use the chat. And you can just chime in with where you see some red flags or where you see a challenge area presented here. And this scenario might feel very familiar for some of us. So Shaina, would you read this scenario?
Sure. Alyssa is a freelance editor who has been in the field for only about 2 years. She recently moved to Los Angeles and is still getting settled in the city. She recently received a gig editing her first full-length feature film. She is nervous about the opportunity, but ultimately excited about the experience. As the job begins, Alyssa is tasked with using a specific editing software tool that she is not familiar with. She is anxious to ask questions and doesn't want to be a bother, so she spends hours looking up tutorials on YouTube. Her imposter syndrome is making it hard for her to relax, and as she has been having trouble sleeping at night. She finds that drinking a couple glasses of wine helps her to unwind and fall asleep.
Thank you so much. What gorgeous orating skills. So in using the chat, would love to hear where you see an issue, and even just start thinking about, okay, if this is someone you were working with, or if this is someone you were supporting, where are the points in this scenario where some intervention is necessary? Wendy, would you be willing to unmute and just share a little bit about that piece?
Sure. So, I think for me, what stuck out was, first of all, this person was moving. So that's sort of a difficult time in one's life to begin with. But also the fact that they're trying something new and not feeling like they can come forward or being too anxious to sort of say, I'm not familiar with this. Can I get some help? And that does happen a lot in the industry. I think people don't want to be called out, or they don't want people to know that they might not know something. So then this person, Alyssa, is up late at night doing all these tutorials. The other thing that struck out, do you want me to continue? Because I have a couple more.
No, this is great. Yeah. And I think you're reflecting what's a lot in the chat, which is perfect. So yeah, feel free to share one or two more.
So the imposter syndrome, which is really familiar I think in this industry to a lot of people. And maybe you guys can, talk about that a little more for people who might not know about that. But also the sleeping, having problems sleeping is an issue for a lot of people, as well as drinking, to help cope with it. So those would be sort of red flags that I would see.
Yeah, those are great. And the ones that you're all putting in the chat are right on point. that, yeah, this person is new to a place and is feeling isolated. And hasn't really had the time to develop a sense of community because she's just diving right into this big work project. And then there's the fact that, yeah, this work project, clearly, there's a team here. There's some reason why, she doesn't feel like she can just ask. And so, we are sort of like, what could happen sort of in this team that could help her feel more confident or feel like it is a safe place and a normal thing to do to ask for help. And so we're going to look at these interventions. And also, of course, I want to just bring up, I think a lot of people mentioned, drinking several glasses of wine. And we don't really know, might that be some kind of substance dependency problem or, so a couple things here that we want to share as possible interventions and that I hope you can kind of then think about Alyssa and her experience, or maybe even your own, and see how they might show up. So one thing that we really like to promote is this idea of a work well with me pre-work survey. And you can go to the next slide, Shaina. So this is an awesome opportunity to really get to learn a little bit about the team. And so recognizing that a lot of these projects have people that are coming on and going really quickly. There's a lot of changes in turnover and contracting and whatnot, that it's going to be sometimes hard to really get to know people on sort of a more personal level as quickly. And so this Work Well With Me is a tool that's being used in the UK, and we're really promoting using it here too. And this is just some questions that folks, when they're coming on a project, can fill out ahead of time. And it's a really great way for the project management to understand the individual needs of folks on the team. And so this would have been a really great place where Alyssa could have written that, hey, if this went out before she got this job, or as she was coming onto the job, she could have said, I'm really new to LA. And so, I just moved here, and all of a sudden that could be sort of an opportunity for, for people to understand and look out for that. This is also a really important place in terms of accessibility and disability justice, that, we're making sure that, if there are special considerations that you might need, that there's a place where you can note that instead of feeling like you have to just kind of verbalize it somehow, which can be really intimidating. This is a place where, where workers can kind of note those things. I also want to recognize, of course, that not all of us are going to be in positions of power in productions where we can ensure that a Work Well With Me survey goes out. So sometimes, it's more about just doing our best to kind of show up for this way with each other, or, asking, hey, is there this kind of tool that this production can utilize? So in terms of addressing isolation, the Work Well With Me pre-survey is a really great way to understand these individual needs. It's also really important that, that there's some clear company policies around, what are your rights around working hours and breaks. Especially knowing when you're going to be going into a several-day work hole, is to really plan out your downtime and social interaction and personal events and be able to sprinkle them through. I've seen some notes in the chat that I really appreciate. Yes, things exactly like LAPPG is a perfect place in terms of having a peer-to-peer network, or even starting an employee resource group. I think what's challenging is with remote teams, obviously, if it's possible to have some space where people can work together in person, I think that's great sometimes. But if that's not possible, even if you're not the project manager, to just say, hey, I'm going to hold some space on Zoom at 7 p.m. If anyone's down to eat dinner and say hi and just check in on how you're doing, feel free to come in. And any of us actually really can do that. We don't have to be sort of a high level, high ranking person at the production or post-production in order to do that. Another thing is creating a well-being pack. So again, this is something that is probably more going to come from the top, but we can certainly ask for. That would be sort of a how-to guide of like, what's the expected conduct? Does this production company have a list of already agreed upon values? We know a lot of times that there is communication that maybe people are receiving on set or during the production itself that then aren't getting carried through to post-production and aren't getting carried through to the freelancers. So I'm a big proponent of like, know your rights. What are this production company's values and what's their policies on bullying and harassment and discrimination? That's totally fair game for everyone to know. This is also a place where you can detail sort of where are sort of mental health and well-being support services in the nearby area. Is there, just as you would on a call sheet, put your local sort of hospital. This is a place where you can provide some resources. It's really important that people, even in post-production, also have access to support numbers and emergency hotlines, not just on set. And we really like also, I've seen just how this is small, and sometimes it comes with a small price, a price tag, but offering and kind of packaging a subscription to a mindfulness app that folks can use while they're working on the job, or even discounts or vouchers for self-care services. Those are all relatively small things that can make a really big difference. And so sort of bringing us towards a close, in some ways, I feel like these 4 E's really summarize kind of exactly what we're kind of trying to get at here. This is one of those things that like, if you're the kind of person that puts a Post-it on your computer screen, like this is one of those Post-its I really recommend making. So the 4 E's that I like to promote of staying well in this work is engagement, empathy, empowerment, and education. So engagement of like, how do I stay engaged in my work? How do I stay engaged in my own life, in my own relationships, and supporting others in doing that too? Again, those one-on-one check-ins, the, hey, how you doing? The, I'm going to hold some space on Zoom so we can all kind of engage each other. Another one is empathy, and this is so important because so often, a lot of folks in this industry have this very like, can be kind of tough guy approach, this masculine energy, this kind of like, you gotta, it's tough and you gotta just deal with it. And that's not helpful. It's important to be able to stay strong, but we need to really have more empathy for each other around what we're going through and what we're struggling with. And I think that would have helped Alyssa too, if in that scenario, if she was working in a space where there was a clearly communicated empathy, she may have felt more empowered to say something about her needs. So that third one is empowerment. And that's empowering others, like encouragement of that, like, oof, you got this. I'm here with you. I'm in this with you. Keep going. But it's also empowering ourselves to speak up when we need to, or say, hey, can you send me a copy of our bullying and harassment policies? And the last is education, which is why, again, so grateful to Wendy and Woody and all of you, because that's exactly what spaces like this get to be, really prioritizing continuing education. No one knows everything, and technology keeps changing. So that's a really important piece too. So we'll just, we'll take a moment or two for some questions, but I just wanted to also say, if you want to dive in further, because we know we gave you a lot in a really short amount of time, we really recommend our Wellbeing Essentials course. This is kind of a 101 primer. Some of the stuff we talked about today is in here. There's a lot more too. This is available on WECA's website at wellbeinginentertainment.org. There'll be a QR code at the end. I think Shaina also just put a link in the chat for the course. Shaina, do you want to talk about the...
Yeah. So if you click or if you scan this QR code, it will bring you to our website where you can download. We made a little takeaway for you all with some reflection space and some of the information that we covered today. So this is our little giveaway for you all so that you can continue to think about these things. That, you know, this is a huge topic that we could easily spend a week, you know, every single day on Zoom talking about these things. So we wanted to give you an opportunity to continue to engage and think about it. Please reach out. Let us know how we can support. Check out our resource hub. And as Ari mentioned, our course, which we'll go into a little bit more well-being overall in the industry and showcase some more tools that you can implement in your work. So thank you again so much for the opportunity. And I think we'll get into we have a little bit of time for Q&A.
Yeah, Shaina, if you don't mind, can you flip back to the other QR code real quick? Some people wanted to grab that.
Sure.
Awesome. And then, Ari, did you want to grab the question in the Q&A?
Sure, yeah, and feel free to add in on the Q&A section, everybody else. And really appreciating everybody's thanks in the chat. Thank you all for showing up. Really appreciating this question. As a business owner, how can we deal with a team member's loneliness, especially with editing and post-production? Yeah, it's a great question. And maybe in some of those last few things I shared, you know, kind of got a sense of some answers. I think really proactively checking in is so important. But doing that in a way that, you know, finding that right balance between making someone feel like you're sort of showing interest in their care without singling them out, you know, is really important. So that's why I think one piece of this for me that I bring up a lot in my grief at work practice is that there's absolutely a need for having these kinds of conversations and holding this kind of space within the workday, within the workplace, right? So people can like really engage in this. And it's totally appropriate that for many of us, we want to just show up to work and do a good job and then leave. And our workplace isn't necessarily the center of our social life. And so making sure that we're also providing tools and resources so people can really kind of express themselves, take care of their needs outside of work, I think is really important too. You know, it doesn't have to all just happen within the context of the workplace.
I've seen other companies I've worked with who have mostly remote staff really take advantage of like this water cooler type approach where I think you mentioned it earlier, you have time like, you know, every Friday at 10 a.m. or something on Zoom where people can just get together and like share a cup of coffee for a little bit, check in. How's it going? Like, how's your dog? You know, I don't know, whatever, just because, and we talked about it when we talked about psychological safety and psychological well-being is really that connection piece, right? So if people are isolated and don't have that connection, it can really be a major contributing factor for some of these things that we're talking about. So I just really like that one. I've seen it work with remote teams in other areas.
I'm seeing one more question around mindfulness exercises that we might have. Oh gosh, where to begin? We've got, between Shaina and I feel like we've got like dozens of different tools up our sleeve. I think one that Shaina and I both really like is kind of making some physical connection points. So, you know, I really love inviting people to really notice the air that they're breathing in, notice the quality of it, like really just take some time to get curious, like, oh, are there any smells or odors? Is there any kind of like, is it humid and thick? Is it dry and crisp? Does it feel warm or cool? And just kind of really like having an intimate moment with the breath in that kind of way, I think is really powerful because of course it all sort of, it's also then you can connect to like, oh, this breath is like what we're all breathing and it's the source of my aliveness. And you can also then make contact with your feet on the floor, your butt in the chair, your back on the back of the chair, and just really feel your body being present. So those are some I really like to
Awesome. Well, I just have to say, and I'm just echoing what people are putting in the chat, but this was a wonderful presentation, so necessary, and the timing I think is right on. There's so much in here, and I don't know about everyone else, but it does feel good, to be in a community where other people are having similar experiences and that we can be here for one another. These ideas that you're sharing are incredibly important. And I thank you guys for taking the time. And just for you all to know, WECA is a nonprofit organization. And we want to support them. They're bringing us this great information. So make sure you check out all the resources that they have. And we thank you, Ari and Shaina, for giving us your time and your expertise. We know you took a lot of time putting this together, and we really do appreciate that. Thank you both so much. And make sure that you catch up on our past meetings at our YouTube channel. Right now, we just put up Frame.io's creative collaboration. That was from our November meeting. And that's with Sean McDaniel and Sarah Katz. And we got to learn about not just creative collaboration, but we saw a demo of camera to cloud that was very cool. And they answered some questions. So definitely take a look at that. And I want to make sure you guys connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. You can use the hashtag LAPPG. And a big thank you to our partners. At the platinum level, we have AJ Video Systems. And at the gold level, we have Adobe, Blackmagic Design, OWC, Zeiss, Frame.io. And our silver partners are Isotope, SGO, EditShare, and Avid. Okay. And it takes a village, as I say. So thank you to our supporting media and community partners. So thank you both so much. And thank you, everybody at home. And we'll see you guys next month.